A winter weekend in Ottawa is warming up. An Ottawa and border project just downriver is suddenly a political flashpoint. And in Washington, a funding fight is colliding with immigration enforcement. Later in the brief, I'll explain why a threat to the Gordie Howe Bridge matters for supply chains that reach right into Ontario. Ottawa, a quick weekend reset first. Today, expect a mix of sun and cloud and about -8 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow edges up to around 0, and by Family Day Monday, the forecast high is near 2, with a chance of light snow at times. If you're planning errands for the long weekend, Monday is Family Day in Ontario, but it's not a federal holiday, and it's not a holiday in Quebec. In Ottawa, most grocery stores are closed, though a handful of locations are expected to stay open, including the Whole Foods at Lansdowne and the Farm Boy at Rideau Centre. Many malls are closed, with Rideau Centre and Tanger generally open, store by store. Libraries are closed Monday, and some museums are open while others are not, so it's worth checking before you go. And a quick junior hockey note with an Ottawa angle. An Ottawa Senators prospect, Gabriel Eliasson, scored on a broken stick shot that turned into a deflection goal. An odd one, but a momentum swing. Barrie used it to blow open the third period in a 6-3 win over Kingston, and it keeps Barrie right on the heels of the Ottawa 67s in the conference race. Turning now to the main thread, a bridge, a border, and a political threat that could ripple into daily commerce. The Gordie Howe International Bridge, linking Windsor and Detroit, is in its final stretch. Major construction is done, and what's left is testing and inspections, with an opening expected in early 2026. It's also meant to relieve pressure on the existing crossing and smooth out trade traffic for manufacturers that depend on tightly timed deliveries. What changed this week is the U.S. President Donald Trump saying he would not allow the bridge to open unless the United States is fully compensated, and suggesting the U.S. should own at least half of the asset. Here's the key point. This bridge is not just a ribbon cutting. It's a piece of high-volume infrastructure that can determine how predictable cross-border trucking is, whether parts arrive on time, whether backups cascade, and how resilient supply chains are during disruptions. Canada has paid the full cost of the project, reported in different coverage as roughly $6.4 billion, with some accounts citing about $4 billion. Despite that, the bridge is publicly owned under a Canada-Michigan agreement dating back to 2012. Canadian officials have pushed back on the idea that the U.S. needs to be compensated for the bridge, and Ontario's premier is urging governments here not to buckle. There's also a second layer, politics around the existing privately owned bridge. The family that owns that older crossing has long opposed the new publicly owned project and has spent heavily on lobbying. Reports say the president's threat came just hours after the U.S. Commerce Secretary met with a member of that family. In response, U.S. House Democrats have announced investigations and are requesting records on contacts and communications tied to the bridge. Michigan Democrats are also moving legislation designed to prevent federal interference with the new bridge's opening or operation. The risk here is less about a physical blockade tomorrow, and more about uncertainty. If companies can't rely on predictable border infrastructure, they build in buffers, extra inventory, extra time, extra cost. That can show up locally, even if you're far from Windsor, because Ontario's manufacturing and logistics web is tightly connected. A quick supporting signal from Ottawa. The federal government has moved its auto strategy from framework to funding, announcing more than $97 million for clean transportation projects, with the largest share aimed at installing thousands of electric vehicle chargers. Different issue, but the same underlying theme. Canada is trying to shape the next decade of transport and trade infrastructure, while cross-border politics can still redraw the day-to-day reality for business. Before we wrap, one U.S. national story to keep in view. Protesters are pressuring Congress to withhold funding for the Department of Homeland Security unless the Trump administration ends mass roundups and deportations. A Senate budget vote failed, and lawmakers left for a recess, raising the prospect DHS could start running out of money as soon as Saturday. But any cutoff may not immediately slow immigration enforcement, because Congress previously approved multi-year funding for immigration enforcement operations, reportedly $75 billion for ICE in last year's large budget bill. The administration's border official says a major operation that targeted Minnesota will soon end, but the broader nationwide program will continue. The final piece to watch, back on our main thread: timelines and paperwork. The bridge is in testing and inspection mode, and U.S. lawmakers are now asking for records and floating legislation. Those are the next concrete markers, whether the opening remains a technical process or becomes a bargaining chip. That's the brief for Saturday, February 14th. Stay warned today, and watch for those small shifts. Policy language turning into operational uncertainty, because that's where real-world delays and costs tend to start.